here today. So we'll get started with Sheikha Muslima.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خير المرسلين محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. It's really truly an honor to be here for this program and for the Oasis Initiative. This topic is something that it was such a bold topic that I talked to the organizers and I said, reviving Dawa, like it's so bold, I'm a 90s or 80s child. So that's maybe something I heard in America growing up when I was a kid, the word Dawa, but I actually haven't heard anyone say that word and those two terms together for a very long time. So when I heard the topic, it actually brought flashbacks of myself growing up. And when it brought me back, actually, when I hear the word Dawa, it took me back to my college days, going to a university here in Southern California, UCSD. We had something called a Dawa table, and it had pamphlets on it, and people would come by and they would ask us questions. We had this, and many of you might be program called Islam Awareness Week. And there's, out of all of my Dawa experiences that I today's, there's one moment. There's literally one moment that has never left me. And it is such a powerful moment. I have witnessed in my life, alhamdulillah, many, many shahadas where people come and they take shahada with publicly in a huge gathering. But this was a moment where I actually saw the transition in someone's face where they went from curiosity to belief. Like I was there when the sister, alhamdulillah, we had a sister or a young woman who was coming to our Islam Awareness Week. And she showed, this is an event, by the way, that for those of us who were active in our MSAs, a lot of time, effort, money, planning would happen for this week long of introduction to Islam programs on campus. And the whole hall would be full of Muslims. It would be the whole community would show up to our Islam Awareness Week. And maybe there would be 4 people of a different faith or a different background in the room. For people who are not Muslim. And subhanAllah, I remember one week where the same girl came to every single program. And afterwards, she started to ask questions and she would see me during passing period. And I remember this moment where she was talking to me and she went from this tone of curiosity and also combativeness because she came in as, she said that she had really bad perceptions of Islam before she was active in the feminist community. And so she was asking a lot of questions about women in Islam. Now, in just randomly in one passing period, she wanted to discuss some point from a guest speaker's talk. And she literally went from saying, oh, that's interesting, to all of a sudden just nodding her head and going, yeah. And I looked at her and her face looked different. And I will never forget that moment because it was like I could see Iman enter her heart. Sorry. So, that is a very priceless moment to me. It's, if we were to ask everyone, what is one thing you would never give up? The coronavirus can take lives from our community. It can take health. It can take so many things. We're in shelter in place. There's a lot of things we're willing to give up, but the one thing none of us would give up is our faith, is our Iman. And I've heard, something Afghans say when a calamity befalls them, They say it often. They said it during the Soviet invasion. They would say it during any type of situation that's difficult. They would say, "Shukr Musliman aslim." Like, Alhamdulillah, we're Muslim. Like, if no matter what's going on, Alhamdulillah, we're Muslim. Meaning, if we die on Islam, that's all that matters. That's all there is. And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ talked to us about this as well in a hadith that's narrated in Bukhari and Muslim. He told the companions, he said, "By Allah, that Allah guides one person through you is better than a herd of expensive red camels." And he was speaking in a language that they could understand in that time. What he was basically saying is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could guide one person through you is better than all wealth. All of the wealth you can imagine is better than is nothing in comparison to this faith. And in the story that I mentioned, subhanAllah, when I look back at it, I was not the person who guided her. I happened to be a witness to her being guided. I happened to just be standing there at that moment and witness it. But it was the MSA, it was the institution, it was everybody who supported it. It was all the flyers, it was all the work that went into it. It was the whole program that was placed there on the campus that became a cause for the sister to be invited to Islam. And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he also told us that the one who guides someone to a good gets the reward of the one who did it. So if I guided you to something, or if I helped you to see something, if I put a flyer, we used to say this to our MSA members, like, if you put a flyer somewhere, and because of that flyer, someone saw it and they came to the event and they got helped or they became Muslim, like, you get a share of the reward of the person who was speaking and was doing the dawah and was calling them, because you were the one who helped guide them to that good. And so in the end, it was a collective, right? It was a collective effort of people that came together for this one sister, subhanAllah, that I remember. And she, alhamdulillah, to this day, she is Muslim. She has a Muslim family. We're friends on Facebook. And it's just something incredible if we've ever witnessed it directly. And all of us maybe have at some point in our lives, whether it's people who have converted to Islam themselves and they can reflect on it, or even for those of us who were born and raised in a Muslim family, that's a privilege to be born and raised in a Muslim, a great blessing. And it's something that points to something that took place in our histories. Like I said, I come from Afghanistan. And so a long time ago, people came to my country and lots of people accepted Islam on their hands because they took the time, the effort, the sacrifice to call my people. So generations later, I have a rich heritage of Islam that I was able to take from my parents, alhamdulillah, who took it from their parents. And my parents were able to raise me with Islam in a land that was so far away from their own, in America. And that's, again, like, if you trace that entire spiritual lineage, in Afghanistan, it's the callers who called my people to Islam. That's where all of the reward goes. Can we imagine any of the lands where Muslims live? Pakistan, India, Egypt, Morocco, Syria. Can we imagine had Islam not entered those lands, had callers not come to those people, what would those lands even be like? Who would those people even be? I mean, where would you be, right? If you were a Muslim who comes from a land of Muslims going back generations, where would you be? And so we have to be grateful to this blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Ali Imran, وَلْتَكُنْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ وَيَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. Let there arise out of you a nation, an ummah that invites to all that is good and enjoins to what is right and forbids what is evil, and it is they who will be successful. In this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word yad'u, invite. And that's where the noun Dawa comes from. We are people who, inshallah, we're supposed to be an ummah who is inviting to this way. And I guess a final thought I want to leave us all with is there's a difference between when one person accepts Islam, or they're guided to Islam, or two people accept Islam, and there's a difference between that and when people accept the faith. And this difference is so important that it's mentioned in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَرَأَيْتَ النَّاسَ يَدْخُلُونَ فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ أَفْوَاجًا. And when you see the people entering the way of Allah, the deen of Allah, in waves. This is a surah, it's in the last part of the Quran. We're very familiar with it. We're supposed to praise Allah. We're supposed to glorify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and seek His forgiveness. And what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what does He call this situation when that happens? He calls it victory, right? إِذَا جَاءَ النَّصْرُ اللَّهِ, the victory from Allah, and He calls it fath. He calls it a great opening. And, this was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam after Fath Mecca. It's believed by many Mufassirin. Some said after the Battle of Hunain. And when it was revealed, he actually, it said that he to his family, he said, "Oh Ali, oh Fatima, rejoice, because the victory and the help of Allah has come, and I have seen waves of people entering the religion." And so, subhanAllah, that before the opening of Mecca, those who were converting into the religion from other parts of the Arabian Peninsula, they came in as a trickle. But it was after the opening of Mecca where people felt that he is the leader of his own city and the leader of the land with the holy site, with the Kaaba in it. And so they then recognized him. The religion entered into places like Afghanistan and Pakistan and Malaysia and other parts of what we call today the Muslim world. It entered those places in waves, right? It did not enter as a trickle. When I saw this, I did the tafsir of the surah earlier in the year for a class that I was doing, and I remember thinking to myself, wouldn't it be amazing if we had like a whole country or a whole nation just enter into Islam again? Like if we could just witness that, wouldn't that be amazing? If we could see, rather than just a few people, like an entire tribe of people come and accept Islam. And subhanAllah, what I didn't realize was that it's already happening. That is happening in Guinea-Bissau. That entire tribe came and accepted Islam. That's an opening from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's a victory from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's hard to imagine that in the modern time, in the times that we live in, with all of the bad news and misinformation that people are spreading about Islam, for there to be an entire people, again, who come and enter religion in a wave. That's a blessing that we have to be very, very grateful for. And we should, inshallah, want to support in every way that we can. That's something, subhanAllah, I believe it's a sign from God. And again, for us to be able to help even one person to be guided to Islam is better than all the wealth that we can imagine. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us that in this beautiful month. May we be supporters of the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and be able to reap the rewards, inshallah, for being of those who supported faith entering into the hearts of other people, inshallah. Barakallahu feekum. Assalamu alaikum.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Thank you so much, Sheikha Muslima, for the beautiful words. I want to thank her very much. That was very touching. One of the things that she mentioned that speaks to me personally is this idea of our ancestry and our ancestors and who they were. And coming from the subcontinent, for me, I have this feeling of I really wanted to meet my ancestors, but that's really the beauty of our religion. We pray for our offspring. And somebody in maybe a few generations ago, maybe 500 years ago, prayed for me. And so I really appreciate that, and I really want that to be something that we can bring to more people. And part of this project for Guinea-Bissau that we're trying to do is, as Sheikha Muslima said, this religion comes to people in waves. And we have an opportunity here to support a group of people who are entering Islam in waves. And I want to talk a little bit about the program. I want to talk a little bit about what this is. And our brother Harun Sugic, who will come on after I speak, will tell you the story of the man we're trying to support as well. One of the things that we're trying to do at Oasis is to be really transparent with the way that we speak about our programming. So this program really is a Dawah project. And as Sheikh Muslima said, that's strong language in today's environment. But for us, Dawah is really important and it's necessary. And when people invite us to teach them their religion, we have a responsibility to really step up. And so part of that is just us doing this program, this Launch Good project itself. If we can put on the screen what it looks like, We're trying to raise a certain amount of money, and inshallah, by the end of today, we can hit our goals. So I want to talk a little bit about the actual project. And it is a zakat eligible project, which I think is important to note for people who are interested in giving their zakat in this blessed month of Ramadan. I have a section that I called By the Numbers. If you go to the website, and that's at launchgood.com/Bissau project. Our admins will link it on YouTube and Facebook as well. But one of the beauties of Ramadan, as you all know, is at the end of our really, tenuous and sometimes hard fasts, we get to break our fasts, and then at the end of the month we have Eid. And we have an Eid al-Fitr program and a Quran program that we want to provide to these villages. And right now in Guinea-Bissau, we have 4 villages that we support. And there's about 3,000 people that come to the festival. And so to give people clothes and to give them prizes and to have a Quran competition and to really celebrate a religion that's new to them, I think is something that I really want to stress. The other thing that we have in these By the Numbers is we have Islamic education programs, a lot of times for children. This is where they learn how to recite Quran, they recite the Fatiha, and we have daily classes for them. And right now we have an opportunity in this webinar to expand those programs. And so we can reach 1,000 people. That's our intention, is to have 1,000 people in these programs daily, learning Quran and really learning the deen itself. And of course, as I mentioned in Ramadan, just having suhoor and iftar every day. This isn't the wealthiest country in the world. We live in the wealthiest country in the world, in the United States of America, but this country isn't. And we want to provide suhoor every day to the villages, and we want to provide iftar every day to the villages. So this, again, is part of our program, what we're trying to do here. I know it's a communal program. We're trying to support a whole village, and obviously there's a lot of needs. So again, I just ask all of you, if it's possible, to go to our website, launchgood.com/Bissau project, and really give. I want to move on now to our brother Harun Sukic. He lives in Istanbul, Turkey, currently. He's someone who's an elder in our community. He's somebody who we definitely look up to as a mentor. He has an amazing book. He has 2 books that I really love, but one of his most recent book is called Heart's Turn. And he's going to talk a little bit about a chapter in the book today, which has very much to do with this topic and the person that we're trying to support in Guinea-Bissau. So we'll move on to him now.
Assalamu alaikum. I'll cut right to the chase and start reading just a one sentence introduction. I was introduced to the community in Guinea-Bissau through Sheikh Mohammed al-Jilani, and so I'm going to continue reading from the book. The chapter is called Dream Progression. I was keen to meet the man who was bringing his traditionally obstreperous people, those who refuse, to the way of Islam. Sheikh Mohammed told me that there were many who were waiting for him to receive them into Islam, so I started making plans to accompany him to Guinea-Bissau. In the event, that particular journey didn't happen, but the Sheikh encouraged me to come to the Gambia the following January. It was there in Banjul that I met Antonio Montero Fernandez, now known as Maulana Abdullah. He appeared to be a simple, soft-spoken working man with strong face, a beard flecked with gray, and the rough hands of a builder, which was how he earned his living. Beneath this working-class exterior was a deep well of spirituality. Born in Guinea-Bissau on September 5th, 1958, Antonio showed signs of intense piety from childhood. I didn't know through which religion, but I knew with certainty that I would call people to God. There was a game that children played in which they would give themselves nicknames. At the age of only 10 years old, Antonio gave himself the name Winda Bogobate. Winda Bogobate. This is difficult. Winda Bogobate, Sina, which in his language means, through me you will find the path. When he was a small child and through primary school, he wanted to be a doctor. As he moved into adolescence, he aspired to the priesthood. He studied the Bible with great passion, but at the age of 17, disenchanted by organized religion, he left the Christian church while continuing his Bible studies. Then he fell ill. For 3 months, he was at death's door. I thought, if I die, I won't be able to fulfill what I came to fulfill. He began having dreams. Night after night, he would dream of the prophet Jesus, peace be upon him. In the dream, Jesus, peace be upon him, would take me by the hand and lead me to a river that was not a river in my land. He would tell me of virtues and show me beautiful things. The dreams were long. When I returned to myself, I realized that if I had seen an angel, I would die. But as I have seen a messenger, I will continue to live. Antonio continued to have vivid dreams. In a single night, he would have as many as 7 dreams. I never told anyone about these dreams with the exception of a sage who simply said, "You are on the right path." After he regained his health, Antonio continued his search and discovered the Baha'i faith. It struck him as similar to Protestantism, but they said, this is something new. This is a new faith. So I thought I would try it out. I attended a gathering and decided to accept it. The Baha'i faith is a heterodox cult that emerged in Persia in the mid-19th century and was immediately reviled as heresy in Iran and throughout the Muslim world. In other parts of the world, the Baha'i attracted a growing number of adherents through its soothing and seemingly open-minded messages of universal brotherhood, the unity of religion, the promotion of world peace, and its easy and unchallenging religious obligations. The fact that this new religion didn't appear to be dogmatic in the way established religions seemed to be would have been compelling. Antonio learned the fundamentals of the faith and began to teach and call others to Baha'ism. It was, in a way, a vehicle for his charisma. Through his preaching, he brought over 12,000 people in West Africa to the Baha'i faith. Eventually, though, he became disillusioned with the flaws and egoism he found in the Baha'i organization and stopped proselytizing. He continued, for the time being, to identify as a Baha'i. Throughout this period, he was inwardly driven by a series of celestial dreams. In 1993, I ascended to heaven and was presented to 3 prophets of God, Jesus, Moses, and Abraham, peace be upon them. I shook each prophet's hand. I then saw a figure sitting upon a higher level. I ascended stairs to reach the figure and found myself in the presence of the Prophet Muhammad. May God bless him and give him peace. We did not speak, but he communicated telepathically. I saw a door behind the messenger, and I wanted to pass through that door, but after a silence, the Prophet spoke. Go back to the world so that you can educate your children and grandchildren. At that moment, I began descending to the earth, but never arrived. My daughter at the time was only 5 years old, and when I awakened from the dream, I thought it will be a very long time before I'll have grandchildren. Time passed, more dreams. In another dream, I ascended to the heavens. Arabic script was written on the sky. A rope dangled before me. I took the rope in my hands, and the rope swung me to a place I had never seen before, but I knew that it was Rio de Janeiro. I tried to descend to the city, but could not. The rope then swung me to South Africa, then to Morocco. I descended to Morocco. In real life, Antonio would retrace part of his dream trajectory, visiting Brazil, Portugal, and eventually Morocco. In 2006, 13 years after his first dream of the prophets of God, Antonio had another powerful and decisive dream. In the dream, I found myself on top of the moon. I felt something hold me with great force and hurl me down to the earth. I was falling with such force that I thought if I hit the earth, I'll break into 1,000 pieces. And then I decelerated and found myself descending onto the shoulders of a powerful man who picked me up and placed me down on the earth. Antonio had reached an impasse and crisis point. He journeyed to Morocco in 2008 at the beginning of Ramadan, seeking answers. He stayed with a Muslim friend there who he had met earlier in Guinea-Bissau. He joined in the fast. He spent most of his time alone and slept. He looked in vain for a Quran translated into Portuguese. He settled for a Spanish translation. He had picked up a Quran before in Guinea-Bissau and had seen something beautiful in it, but someone tapped him on the shoulder and took it from him. He wanted to see it again. He was deeply affected by a verse from Surat al-Furqan, the Criterion. Have you not seen how your Lord stretches out the shadow? If he had willed, he could have made it still. He made the sun a guide to it. We withdraw it unto ourselves gradually. He read the translation of the Quran. It gave him strength and propelled him to retreat to a Moroccan forest to meditate. I meditated for a very long time. Tears flowed from my eyes continuously. Antonio was in a state of perplexity. As the sun was setting, I raised my hands in supplication and said, "O God, if Islam is good for me, guide me to Islam. And if the Baha'i faith is good for me, then keep me in this faith." I asked God to give me a sign that night. And if God did not give me a sign, to accept my decision. When I returned from the forest, I broke my fast and went to sleep. And in a dream, a man came and killed another young man who was my companion. The man that killed the companion said, "My master is going to come to kill you as well." So this master came and they were fighting, and I looked up and saw the moon was very near to me. The longer I gazed at the moon, I felt my body growing larger and larger. And when my adversary saw this, he fled. Antonio awoke from the dream with conviction and clarity. I said to myself, there is nothing in this world to prevent me from entering Islam. The next day, Antonio Montero Fernandez became a Muslim. He went to his friend and declared his acceptance of Islam. Astonished, Antonio's Muslim friend confessed that before he had met him, he had seen him in a dream dressed in the white robes of a Muslim and praying as a Muslim. When I arrived in Guinea-Bissau and came to meet you, I found that you were not Muslim. Now today you tell me you wish to enter Islam. So his friend formally received Antonio Montero Fernandez, Winda Bogobati Sina, into Islam through the declaration of faith. Antonio took the Muslim name of Abdullah. For 3 years, he studied the Holy Quran and meditated on its meanings. He left everything and spent time in Morocco, Mauritania, and Senegal. I left my wife and children with God. Throughout his time, he performed remembrance of God a lot. While in Senegal, he had a dream. I saw feet, many feet. Then I saw legs. Then I saw bodies. I saw the Balanta people. In the dream, as I watched the Balanta people, I heard the call to prayer, and I realized that my tribe would become Muslim. The Balanta people were calling the prayer. Through this dream, Abdullah became convinced that the Balanta were already spiritually Muslim. It was then that he decided to call his people to Islam. The very next day, he returned to Guinea-Bissau and began. I went from village to village. I would spend 3 months in one village teaching my people about Islam. I gave them the freedom to study and find the secret themselves. The door was already open for him because he had already called so many thousands to the Baha'i faith. So he returned to these congregations and told them, I have reached the final message. It has been a progression, and the people trusted me. On the very first day he invited people to Islam, I met the powerful man in my dream whose shoulders I descended on. He was the chief of the village, the Tabanka, where I began calling people to Islam. That very first day, the chief and 1,500 men, women, and children of his people became Muslim. Within 3 days, 6,000 souls had come to Islam. Since that time, 17,000 Balanta people have entered Islam through the ministrations of this simple builder and inspired teacher who had tapped into the spiritual yearnings of ordinary people from his tribe. When one village would enter Islam, the neighboring village would follow suit and embrace the faith. 20 mosques were established. On the day I sat with Maulana Abdullah, he told me that 2 tribal chiefs representing 9,000 souls had just asked him to call them to Islam. There are 400,000 Balanta people in Guinea-Bissau, and I believe that every one of our people can enter Islam, but we are time. I went away after Maulana Abdullah related his story and realized that I'd forgotten to ask him how it was he came to the guidance and teaching of Sheikh Muhammad Haidara al-Jilani. Months later, I put the question to Sheikh Muhammad himself. I should have guessed the answer. He had a dream.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sidi Harun. What I want to do now, guys, was play you one of our first videos. We have a series of videos that are coming out, and this will be the first one, and we'll just share that. It's about 1 minute, and we'll move on.
Calling people to Islam has always been my calling. I just never knew how big of an opportunity I had until I met Maulana. When I first saw him describing the circumstances of his people, I found a man who was oozing of sincerity and wanted nothing more than to call his people to Islam. I was told about how difficult his tribe was, and how they didn't necessarily want religion. But Maulana wouldn't give up. So I went with him. He had been calling them over and over and over. And this last time, the door just opened up. They answered. Now we have hundreds of new Muslims and a massive need of providing them with teachers.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. So that was one of our videos. We plan to release a few more in the month of Ramadan. Again, this video and everything else is being directed to Launch Goods campaign. You can go to launchgood.com/Bissau project. And I want to thank Sidi Harun for that beautiful reflection. And again, his book is called Heart's Turn. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it at Mecca Books, wherever you guys buy your books from. I want to introduce our next speaker. This is Sheikh Walid Mossad. He's based on the East Coast. He's a great friend of mine, an amazing human being. He's the scholar in residence of Sabil Collective, and it's a community that is global. And right now, he's in Cairo, and he's going to give us a few words. So we'll introduce Sheikh Walid now. Thank you so much, Sheikh Walid.
Okay. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. So thank you Sidi Faisal and everyone at Oasis Initiative for this I think tremendous project in Guinea-Bissau. Alhamdulillah, I've been very fortunate, and I've met Maulana Abdullah twice now in the Gambia. And I had the opportunity to speak with him also a little bit about what's going on. And I hope, inshallah, maybe someday that I can actually make the trip over to Guinea-Bissau myself, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And just speaking about Dawa in general, and what we've learned from our teachers and what we've learned from our mentors and our elders, people like Sidi Harun and people like Sheikh Muhammad Haidar al-Jilani and many others. Imam al-Sha'rani, he says that what we owe to humanity can come in three sort of distinct levels. In other words, how we deal with other people. What is the minimum that we owe them, and what is the most that we can do for them? So he said the minimum that we should be able to do for people is do them no harm. So any interaction we have any other being, whether it be Muslim, non-Muslim, in fact, that holds true for any being, anything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put on the face of this earth. There's a certain sacrosanctity, inviolability about that, and it should be respected, what's called a hurma, kind of a sacredness. So we have the ability in this beautiful deen of ours to kind of sacralize everything. Everything is sacred in a sense because it is represents the choice of the divine, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the minimum thing we should do is not hurt anybody and not harm them. And that entails also to even tolerate harm coming from them to us. And the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, la darar wa la dirar. There is no harm and there is no reciprocating of harm. And many of the scholars have said this is one of the quintessential teachings of the Prophet ﷺ, one of the quintessential hadith, in the sense that you can summarize many teachings of our Prophet ﷺ even in this one hadith. And he said the second level is that we should bring good to them. So minimum, don't do any harm to them. Beyond that, we should bring something good. So they come out of an interaction with us, or out of a relationship with us, or an ongoing relationship with us, with something that is of benefit. And the Prophet ﷺ said, خَيْرُكُمْ أَنْفَعَكُمْ لِلنَّاسِ. The best of you are those who can bring the most benefit to others. And I hope that we can live up to that. But the interesting thing, what he said, is the highest level, the most that you can do for humanity, is to take them by the hand and lead them to salvation, which in essence means dawah, which in essence to call to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is really why we're here. Islam is not, it's not a political platform, it's not an ideology, it's not a means for social change, though it could be used for that. But ultimately, the reason that we're all here is that so we may know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you some knowledge of God, then there's an added responsibility upon you, and that you have to call others to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what our Prophet ﷺ sacrificed everything for. This is what he would always say in his dua. He would always say, Ummati, Ummati. And all of these people are Ummah. All of these people who lived after the time of the Prophet ﷺ, all the people in Africa and in Asia and in South America and in Europe and in North America and in Australia and in Antarctica, if there's any people there, they are all part of our Ummah. They are part of the Ummah Muhammadiyah. On the Day of Judgment, we will all walk behind the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And that is quite an honorable thing. And furthermore, we, inshallah, from Ummat al-Istijaba, we answered the call of the Dawah. At least we have done so outwardly, and we hope, inshallah, inwardly, that we can live up to that outward claim. And if that is the case, then we have an added responsibility, and it's also an honor to be able to call to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, وَدَاعٍ إِلَى اللَّهِ بِإِذْنِهِ وَسِرَاجًا مُنِيرًا. So he is the da'i, he is the one who calls to Allah بِإِذْنِهِ, by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there's sort of a divine sanction or a divine mandate if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts you in a position to bring others to God, to bring others to Him. And just to see what Mawlana Abdullah has been able to do, it sounds like something we read in the books, like that happened, hundreds of years ago. But there are others who've done similar things. Habib Ahmed Mashur al-Haddad, that some of you may have known about, called thousands of people in East Africa also to Islam. And one of the things for those maybe who haven't visited Africa. I've been fortunate to visit both East Africa and West Africa, North Africa. There's a type of, in Arabic I would call it tiba. There's a type of purity and pristine nature, not just to the landscape, but also the people who make up that landscape. You don't feel that people are conniving, or it's kind of, you see what you get, and there's kind of a genuineness about people there. And I think that's one of the reasons perhaps that they readily accept Islam when it's shown to them in the right way, when it's shown Islam as it is presented by the heirs of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. People usually only get into trouble when things get mixed in with it that are not part of Islam, ideologies and political platforms and all the sorts of things that people tend to muddy the waters with when they inject other things that are there to drive perhaps some sort of personal or political agenda. But I didn't feel that with the people that I come across with, and I think this is a great opportunity for us to be part of the project in any way that you can. The Quran exhorts us to give. If we're in a position of being able to give, then give with your souls, give with your resources, whatever you have at your disposal, then we should be giving. And in actuality, we are the recipients. And that's the beautiful thing about giving, is that you're actually the recipient. And you give something away, it actually doesn't leave you. It only multiplies and enumerates somewhere else for you. So it's an amazing thing that it's still part of you, but even in a greater way, in a better way. And so that, I think, should be our intention in supporting projects like this. And I'm happy to help in any way that I can, and even if it's with a word, with a dollar, with whatever it might be. And I thank the organizers for putting this together, and I think that's all that I have to say for now. Jazakumullah khair.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sheikh Walid. Really appreciate those words and your reflections. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about the project, because we've kind of gone into some speakers now. We've heard some of their stories. We've heard some of their nasiha, their sincere counsel. And I wanted to talk a little bit about us, about how we're sort of approaching this project. One of the things that I always find important is talking about your values and talking about your principles. And one thing that we feel is very important to highlight is that we are locally driven. As we talked about, as Sheikh Walid mentioned, he's met Maulana, as Harun Sugic mentioned in his book, Sidi Harun did. This is a locally driven project. And when we have locally driven projects, what we want to do is just be facilitators. And being a facilitator is really great because it allows you to use your global networks like we're doing here in this campaign. And it also lets you bring in a global network of people like yourselves who can hopefully help with projects like this. So one thing is we're locally driven. We employ trusted leaders from the Bissau community to drive our programs. Another thing that I think is very important for us is that we're ethically grounded. We have fair pay for teachers and staff, and we find that essential to our success. As a Muslim community, we have to get used to investing in the infrastructure. If we're not going to invest in our staff, if we're not going to invest in our teachers, this is the issues we find ourselves in, which is a vacuum. And we don't want any vacuums in these countries, so we want to remain grounded in that fair pay. The other thing that I want to say here for the webinar is we kind of talk about it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it takes a village for Dawah. And we want to invest in the infrastructure of the village itself. We want to repair walls. We want to fix roofs. In certain societies, sometimes they come to us, for example, in Guinea-Bissau, and they say, you know, someone just needs their roof fixed, you know, or, you know, the imam of the mosque might need some help. So how can we sort of provide a humanitarian level of support? That's something that we really feel important. That is important. And then the other principle that I really think is important is value added. And we, in our societies, even in the United States of America, tend to take our teachers for granted. We sort of just expect them to teach and that's it. What we want to do is we want to introduce in this part of the world, in Guinea-Bissau, the concept of continuing education. And these teachers in the villages that are teaching Islam to hundreds of people, they need to be taken care of and they need to be given more skills and more training. And so we have in this project, something that again, I really want all of you to support, is continuing education quarterly with quarterly intensives. and also by yearly intensives. So we have different programs. We have people that come from Al-Azhar University in Cairo that will be teaching them religion and teaching them different things that are really important to continue their skills, both in Islam and also as human beings who are trying to get better. What I want to do next is talk about, I think we should just introduce our next speaker. And before we introduce Imran Malik, we're going to play a video that he made. Imran Malik runs Imran A. Malik Studios. He just recently graduated from Zaytuna College. He's a dear friend of mine, somebody who's extremely artistic, someone who is extremely talented. And he actually went when we had the mass conversion for a lot of Muslims that Sidi Harun mentioned in the book. Imran Malik went with a group of people, and we want to play his story now that he put together. This is part of a larger documentary that he was making about the project and about just the concept of Dawah, and his job as a documentarian is to sort of give us insight into what his trip was like. So we're going to see a really amazing 3.5-minute clip right now, and we'll play that for you all. Thank you.
I flew into the Gambia with 40 pounds of camera and solar power equipment strapped to my back. At Sheikh Mohammed's house, we packed into 2 cars and began a trek through Senegal and then into Guinea-Bissau. Our delegation was 12 people. Our intention was to witness and celebrate 2 villages that were embracing Islam. The journey took over 20 hours. Guinea-Bissau is an impoverished country, and for years has been plagued with drug trafficking. That's why when we finally got into Guinea-Bissau, every 20 minutes or so we hit another checkpoint. It must have been about 60 in total. Just 10 miles from the first village, one of our cars got stuck on an unfinished road. They had to turn back. The Balanta people have known Muslims for a long time. The only reason these villages are embracing Islam now is because the call is coming from one of their own elders, a man known throughout the country simply as Maulana. Maulana had arranged for all of the elders, youth, and young men and women of the village to take their shahada with Sheikh Muhammad Haidra al-Jilani.
أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا رسول الله.
After the 2 events in 2 villages, Sheikh Muhammad and the rest of the delegation went back. Sirajuddin, Arthur, and myself stayed behind for about 10 days. We were there to support the new Muslims as best as we could. We slept on straw mats, endured mosquitoes, ate whatever was given to us. Then within a few days, Ramadan began. In the few days that we were there, we only scratched the surface learning about these people. Their needs are many. And I pray that the community that I come from, with the many blessings that God has given us, are able to support these beautiful people that strive to join our family of believers, that we support them in ways that are meaningful.
All right, Assalamu alaikum. I want to go ahead now, after just really listening to that beautiful video and that beautiful story, to talk to the person who actually shot the story and gave us that story. And for 5 minutes, I just want to talk to our brother Imran Malik right now. And perhaps, Imran, you can speak to us a little bit about your experience going to Guinea-Bissau. You mentioned 20-hour journey. One thing that stood out to me in the video was your, there's some beautiful images of just living life in the village. And maybe you can talk a little bit about the people there and your experience in being in a new environment like that.
It's really wonderful to be here. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it'll take 1 second, guys. Give me 1 second. We're going to get Imran on.
Okay, alhamdulillah. Okay, assalamu alaikum, everyone. It's so wonderful to be here, to hear such beautiful words about this project. Sidi Harun Sujit's description of Maulana. I mean, I met Maulana, of course, but I didn't know all the details that he shared in his book, so that was really wonderful. And yeah, it was an amazing journey, very difficult journey. But what was interesting, well, some of the things that really stood out to me was that, this was 2018, 2 Ramadans ago that we were there, that, in 2018 and 2020 now, that people still live like this. There's people in the world that have no electricity, they have no running water. The only way that they make money over there, it's amazing. Like I can't eat cashews now because I know how much hard work goes into it. Or at least if I do eat them, I eat them with extreme presence because I saw them picking the cashews. They look like apples, and on top of the apple is a little cashew. It's so strange. And they sit there, and you see a little clip in that video of a woman. She's taking the apples and she's picking the cashews off one by one. And the only way that the people in these villages that we visited make money is that they pick these cashews and they sell them to foreign markets that ends up in our Costco's and other things like that. So the time that we were there, it was a little disheartening because a lot of people weren't showing up for the classes, but we found out that a lot of the men were out there farming cashews because it was cashew season. So it's what I'm inspired to say right now is that projects like this, they need long-term presence and long-term support. You have to be there and be present with people over a long period of time. So the only way we can do that is to get teachers who can stay there all the time. It's not enough to just go there and collect shahadas and then to leave.
Right. Thank you. So thank you so much. That journey, hopefully, again, I want to tell everybody, is part of a longer documentary that hopefully Imran will put together and release for us. And, the journey, as we said, and Imran mentioned this a little bit, is we don't just want to give these people the shahada and leave. And this is really what this campaign's about. It's about supporting an infrastructure, a place for them to go and to continue to learn their religion. And we hope for this to be just one example of many opportunities that we can provide in the world at large to really spread an amazingly positive, beautiful message of Islam that sometimes we don't really see in the world on the news and other places. So thank you, Imran, for your time. I want to introduce our next speaker now. I want to introduce Brother Ali. Some of you know Brother Ali as a musician through his music. Others like me know him as just a mentor and someone who is, in my mind, a teacher. You meet certain kinds of people and they're always teaching you, and that's what I really appreciate about Brother Ali, is that in his life, he really lives the role of a teacher. And when you can do that, you just become as awesome as him. So I really want to introduce him now. He'll give us a few words on the topic of reviving Dawah, and hopefully he can also speak to being in an urban environment, being among certain kinds of people that we see in the United States as well, and speaking to them in a way that really speaks to their hearts about this religion. So we'll transition over to Brother Ali in a little bit. Thank you. Yeah, I noticed that. Should we have him call in again? Okay. Yeah. Sorry, guys. We're experiencing a little bit of technical issues getting Brother Ali on the line. Give us just a couple minutes and we'll try to get him on.
I can say more if you want to delay.
Okay. So what we'll do is, while we're trying to get Brother Ali on the line, let's go ahead and bring back Imran because he has a lot more to say, and we can get more of his thoughts.
So I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you, Brother Ali, but we can't see you.
Okay.
Maybe you can turn off your video. Yeah, there you are.
There we go.
Okay.
So Amina, what should we do? Are we going to Brother Ali next? Okay, so I'm going to introduce Brother Ali, everybody. Let's go ahead and we'll go to him now.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Alhamdulillah, I'm really grateful and honored to be invited to be in on this conversation. I really want to thank our teacher, Dr. Omar Farouk Abdullah. Faisal, I want to thank you for your work. Also, the people that are doing the difficult job of bringing all the technical things together. I also really want to thank Sheikh Muslima and also Sheikh Walid. It's really important that we understand that we take our religion from qualified scholars. And what we mean by qualified scholars are people who have dedicated their adult lives, all of their waking moments, to learning, understanding, to memorizing the Quran, memorizing texts, and doing so with living teachers who have been trained and molded throughout their lifetime and have learned this religion from the human touch and from the experience of sitting with their teachers on back to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I think it's really good that artists like myself and my dear brother Imran, who really has done wonderful work, not only with his podcast, but also, and the podcast that he's done for Zaytuna and for others, but also with this project seems really dope. I've had the blessing of visiting the Gambia twice and have met Maulana Abdullah. I haven't been to Guinea-Bissau yet, but I'm really, really grateful that that the work is being done. Also, our dear brother Sirajuddin, who is a young emerging scholar of his own. Alhamdulillah. I just want to say a few words. I've been asked to say a few words about the subject of inviting people to the religion of God and to the religion of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The reality is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has invited us, and the Messenger of God, prayers and peace be upon him, has given an invitation that applies to all of the human beings living from his time until the day of judgment. And so literally the neighbors that we live with, all of them have been invited by these two specifically, by God himself and by the Messenger of God, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so those of us that are in the role of sharing and extending that invitation to people, we really do it on their behalf. So of course, it's not a small thing, as we all know. If in former times, I would have said if the president asked you to invite someone to the White House on his or her behalf, but I don't feel like using that analogy today. But if someone of very high stature, if Sheikh Muhammad Jailani, for example, were to say, "Hey, can you invite so and so to come to my house?" The role of extending that invitation, how we would say it, the way that we would word it, the way that we would try to explain to the person what a big invitation that is, would be related not necessarily to us, but based on the honor that we have in being the connection between the one who is invited and the one who has been invited. And so that's the role that we have. Sheikh Muslima mentioned these waves of people that are invited to Islam and that enter into Islam. I'm the product of one of those waves in the United States of America in this century. We all know that there were, and Dr. Omar Farouk Abdullah has given us great instruction on the reality that there were large numbers of West Africans in the Americas who were Muslim before Columbus and before the Europeans got here. But then there was a large wave of people that were enslaved. and those people had a high percentage that were Muslim, and lost that connection over the time that they were in the Middle Passage, but especially once they got to these shores. And so there was a period on a project of hundreds of years of institutionalizing methods for people to lose their outer knowledge of their language, of their culture, of their religion, of who their families are, of who their tribe is, of their names. So all of the things that connect a person to meaning and identity in this world or in this plane, this 300-400 year project has been afoot to remove all of that from the people who are the children of the enslaved Africans in this part of the world and around the world. In 1930 and in the early 1900s, there were several attempts made by people who came to invite specifically that group of people back to Islam. And they found that it was really difficult to do so. In 1930 is when the Nation of Islam was born as we know it today. There were projects, of course, before and after that, but the Nation of Islam as we know it was born in 1930. And from the early 1930s until 1975, Elijah Muhammad was the leader of that organization. Elijah Muhammad is somebody that we don't know for being an incredible orator, but he's a person who inspired the great Malcolm X, and he's a person who inspired the great Muhammad Ali. And he's the person who inspired so many from that community. And there was a large, over that 45-year period, there was a large number of people in the urban centers that entered into Islam. And the message at that time was that Islam is a religion that comes to tell the truth and that comes to speak against evil and to speak for good. So the message in speaking to the power of the system was to critique the things that were oppressive about the society at large. So they critiqued white supremacy, they critiqued anti-blackness, they critiqued the war machine, they critiqued the prison industrial complex, and they spoke that truth to power. But they also had a message to individuals that said that in our community and in our personal lives, that our relationship with God and our ability to be empowered is directly related to our applying the guidance of the religion of Islam to ourselves. And so even though people like to drink the way that they do now, even though the way people liked marijuana, the way that they love it now, even though people love to have non-committed relationships, intimate relationships and romantic relationships, the same way that people do now. The message was always that amongst ourselves, that this is a religion that comes to clean us up and to give us good character. And so in 1975, when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad passed away, his son had been studying Islam and knew that the theology of that initial movement, the Nation of Islam, wasn't what we would understand to be Islamic orthodoxy. And so he had studied Islamic orthodoxy. He had been taught Arabic. He read the Quran, but he was largely self-taught. So his son, Imam Warithuddin Muhammad, became the leader of the Nation of Islam in 1975. And so this group that numbered somewhere around 500,000 in the United States of America in this century, numbered about 500,000. In 1975, when he became the leader, he dismantled everything about the Nation of Islam that didn't line up traditionally with Sunni Islam, traditional Islam, and he introduced the things that he saw were missing. And so in that period, in a very short period of time, this group of 500,000 people who had been amassed throughout this entire project and were inspired by what they were taught, entered into a traditional Sunni understanding of Islam. And then, of course, after that, Minister Farrakhan and some of the people who weren't happy with that change reinstituted the Nation of Islam. But the overwhelming majority of individuals and families that were in that community stayed with Imam Warithuddin Muhammad and became what we understand to be Orthodox or traditional Muslims. So this is something that happened in our time period, and I think it's really important and useful for us to look and see what was it about this movement of people from 1930 until today. This work continues until this day. And just a very few things that I can point out. one of the things that Dr. Cornel West said to me when I was talking to him about speaking to my audience and trying to introduce them to things and to ideas and concepts that I thought would be really beneficial for them. One of the things he said to me is, you can't lead the people unless you love the people. And you can't save the people unless you serve the people. And he's known for speaking in these, what we call Westisms, like these really poetic gems that put things into, that make things, these enormous concepts very useful. But as a person, I was introduced by that Dawa in the 90s of urban Black Islam. And a lot of the young people, a lot of the people in my generation who were young at that time, who entered this religion, Black and white, came through hip hop music and came through Black urban Islam. And the message was very clear. The message at that time was that you are more valuable than this society has made you out to be, whether you're Black, white, or other. Because the reality is that we all know that Black people have been taught that they're less than human, that they're not very nuanced, that all of these hypersexualized and violent messages and images that we get about Black people. But what they even said to those of us who came from the European American side of things was that calling you white has reduced you to something smaller than what you are. Being white doesn't mean anything other than you're supposed to be superior to somebody else. And all of the white people in this country have a feeling, or most of them have a feeling that, like, that's not true and that's not something that I believe in. So having lost so much of the connection to who all of us are, the message was that you're more valuable, you're bigger, you're more profound. You're a soul living inside a body, and your soul is directly from the infinite reality that was created by God. And God knew you before he created anything at all. And along with that, there's a lifestyle and there's a character building mechanism of this religion that will make you allow you to become who you're meant to be. So those things I think are really beautiful, that this religion is really beautiful and perfect. It doesn't need to be rebranded. It doesn't need to be made, as our teacher Sheikh Walid said, it doesn't need to be equated to an ideology or a political platform. But then also these people that we're talking to, these people that we're inviting are amazing people. We all know what happened with Muhammad Ali, and this will be the last thing and I'll wrap it up, but we all know the story that happened with Muhammad Ali after he became a Muslim. So Muhammad Ali, rahimahullah, the greatest of all time, the greatest fighter and the greatest sportsman and athlete, since sports and athletes have been broadcast around the world, that he entered into this religion, and America was terrified of him because of the fact that he spoke the truth. He said, you called us Negroes and we're not. We're the first people on earth. You said that we're small and we're not. And he told the truth to America directly with no, he didn't rebrand it. He didn't hold any of it back. But then he also spoke to his own community and said, we need to do better. We need to live better. So America was terrified of him. And even though he was the greatest fighter while he was active, America was terrified of him. But then he was asked and recruited to go to Vietnam. And he said, I won't do it. And he refused to do it based on the fact that he was Muslim. Our dear beloved teacher, Dr. Omar Farouk Abdullah, did the same thing, by the way, and actually met Muhammad Ali while he was opposing the draft. Allah preserve him. So when Muhammad Ali took that particular stance, and America saw, the world really saw, that he had to give up his title, he had to give up, his championship and the ability to practice what he was a master of, which was professional heavyweight boxing. He was the most famous person. He was in the prime of his career, and he walked away from it. And he said, if you can take my title, you can take my ability to fight, but you can't take what I believe in. And if you send me to jail, I'll go to jail. And he said, if you put me to death, he looked in the camera and said, then stand me up right now. I'm ready to die for what I believe in. When he made that stance, the world fell in love with him. And by the time he reached his old age, he had become a hero to everybody when they had feared him. And they looked back on what he ended up doing, and they said, we need to re-examine what he was saying and find the truth in what he was saying. So we all know that part very quickly. Before Muhammad Ali was a Muslim, when he was 18 years old, he was accepted into the Olympics on behalf of the United States. He went to Rome in 1960, fought in the Olympics, and won the gold medal. He beat all of his opponents, and everyone had to stand there while the U.S. flag was raised. The national anthem was played for the United States. He came back to Louisville, 18 years old. This is the greatest accomplishment of his life. Didn't know that he was going to go on to be the most famous human being on earth of his time. And he had his gold medal. He wore it everywhere he went. He said he showered with it. He wore it all the time. And he would go in Louisville, Kentucky in 1960 to restaurants where his family couldn't eat, where his people couldn't eat. They didn't serve what they called colored people at that time. But because he had the gold medal, because he was from Louisville, they would let him eat there, and he could bring his mom and his family and all these people. And so he thought it was a beautiful thing. He had done this for his country, and he was starting to reap the rewards of it. His mother went back to one of those restaurants with some other family members one day after church because they wanted to eat there. And they knew that now, well, we're from the Clay family, and so we're allowed to eat here now. But Cassius Clay wasn't there with his gold medal. And so they said, I'm sorry, we don't serve colored people here, and you can't eat here. When Cassius Clay, this is before he became Muhammad Ali, when he got that news, they said, your mama can't eat at the restaurant because you're not there. And it clicked in his mind that if this gold medal doesn't mean that my people are free, if it just means that I'm going to have these privileges now, but my mother isn't free, my people aren't free, then this medal means nothing. And he took it to the Ohio River, which runs through through Kentucky, Louisville, and he threw his medal in the river. Nowadays, we talk about, and Sheikh Waleed's course is, that he's doing right now, which is an amazing course on the discourses of Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, Ridwanullah alayh, talking about the idea of zuhud, of being willing to give up the things that we have in the dunya, including people's, our prestige and all of this stuff, to not have those things, that we can have them in our hand, but never in our heart. And so this was in Muhammad Ali and in his family before he became a Muslim. And we could tell story after story of all these great people that convert to Islam, both in this society and others. And the reason that I say this is because of the fact that the people that we're reaching out to, whether we're talking about, the people in Nebraska and Kansas and Georgia, where Dr. Omar grew up, or we're talking about, the people in Detroit or in Louisville, or, and also in the suburbs, all of these people that we share life with day in and day out, these are God's people. And what's inside them is not just the reality, not only the reality that it's their right to know God, it's their right to know him properly, it's their right to know the messenger of God, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and know what a human being can become. But it's also the reality that they have what we in our community need. Allah put inside of them what we need for us to be who we're going to be. If you look at the great work that Dr. Omar has done on the reality that when people enter the religion, they bring with it all their creativity, all of their collective and their communal experience and knowledge and expertise and wisdom. They bring all of that into the religion, and they actually create, once we're exposed to the tradition, it creates this really amazing new energy that allows to have revivals of the tradition and revivals of the religion. So alhamdulillah, I'm grateful to be with you all. God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum. Ramadan Mubarak.
Thank you. Alaikum. Thank you so much, Brother Ali. I really appreciate the words and the wisdom. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for joining online. For those that missed Brother Ali's part, or Sheikh Waleed's part, or Sheikh Muslim's part, we will post the full recording, so everyone will be able to watch this later. I want to thank Brother Ali. I want to thank Harun Sugic. I want to thank Imran. I want to thank everybody that spoke today. At this point in the program, we're kind of coming to a close, but this is really the part of the program where I'm asking you, and we really need to reach our mark today. We have donors who want to match. If we can raise another $10,000, they might match that. So what I'm asking all of you right now to do is to go to launchgood.com/Bissau project and really give as much as you can today, with the intention that we want to give not just out of the goodness of our heart, but we want other parts of the world to really share in this blessing of Islam, and also, as Brother Ali mentioned, for us to learn. And one thing I can say about being in West Africa is that when you meet people, they're so beautiful. It's very clear that I have so much to learn from these people. Whether they, can read as well as I can or have a master's degree like I do, has absolutely nothing to do with it. And the beauty of human beings is that you see light on their faces, and we really want the people of Guinea-Bissau to really feel supported. And one of the things that they've always said to us, and Imran can mention this as well, is people always come. People always come and they bring money and they bring food, but they leave. And part of what we're doing for this project, for the Bissau project, is we don't want to leave. We want to support these people for generations to come and keep them not just in the religion, but support them and be a part of their global community. So God bless you all. Please do donate as best and as much as you can. One of the things that we want to do is also share how to get involved. We want to share the word about the campaign. We'll post a link to the WhatsApp group where you can join and you can spread messages on WhatsApp as well. So we have a variety of ways we want you to be involved. Your prayers obviously are extremely important, especially during this blessed month of Ramadan. The campaign will last all of Ramadan. So we ask that you give as much as you can. And inshallah, we'll move on now to Dr. Omar Farooq Abdullah. He's the scholar in residence of the Oasis Initiative. Dr. Omar also very much believes in this project, and we'll hear a few more words from him about the topic of reviving Dawah.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Ramadan Mubarak to all of you. We've now begun the fast by the grace of God, and may God give you strength and success and acceptance in this wonderful month. We are not able to do the things that we're used to doing in the month of Ramadan, but we can do those as much as possible at home. We can do substitutes for them. You can pray Taraweeh on your own and with your family, and you don't have to be a Hafiz. You can just work on the verses and surahs that you have recited, that you have memorized, and recite them. And you can also use this as a time to do other good things as well. So make the most of this Ramadan. God has willed it to be like this, and He will not hold you responsibility. He will not hold you responsible for anything that is beyond your capacity and yet you cannot do. Ramadan is a time of graciousness and mercy and generosity. The Prophet ﷺ was more generous in this month than any other time. And one of our acts of generosity, and it's also a duty, is to do Dawah, is to do the Dawah. And so we have right now a project going on in Guinea-Bissau, which is a Dawah project. And I want to ask you to support that with your prayers and with your advice and with your attention and by telling others if they're interested. And we'd like to raise funds for that, independent of what we do in our own organization. We would like this to be something else that people, even people who are not associated with us and don't even know about us, that they can contribute to. Guinea-Bissau is a beautiful country and an agriculturally fertile and rich country that is to the south and the west of the Gambia. It's not very far from the Gambia. You have to go through Senegal a short distance and then come into Guinea-Bissau. The Gambia, which is the smallest country in Africa, and in my mind, one of the most beautiful and one of the best, the Gambia, Gambians are 100% Muslim. When you see Christians and others in the Gambia, they're always from someplace else. They're not Gambians. Guinea-Bissau, on the other hand, is one of those countries from which people come to work in the Gambia or to trade in the Gambia or to visit. And Guinea-Bissau has an old Muslim population, which is centuries old, but it also has a majority of people who follow traditional African religion and who are also Christian converts. especially Catholic. It was a Portuguese colony, and the Catholic Church has spent a lot of money on Guinea-Bissau. There are 4 tribes there: Manjaco, Balanta, Papel, and another tribe. I don't remember its name right off. And the Manjacos have been coming into Islam for some time, but the Balanta, who are perhaps the most dominant tribe, they are people who always refused. And because they refused adamantly, the Mandinkas, who tried to bring them Islam, called them Balanta, which means they refuse. And so they're the refusers, but now the refusers are beginning to accept. And this is something that has happened in recent years. It happened, first of all, by a number of individuals who became Muslims, and in the cases I know, then came to the Gambia, memorized the Quran, and stayed there. And then also there was a man who had embraced Christianity. And in the wake of his conversion, because he's also prominent in the Balanta tribe, we began to get big conversions in the tribe. Sometimes the conversion of an entire tribe, or I should probably say here, clan. And then also Islam began to spread more and more among the Papel and among the Manjaco and among others in Guinea-Bissau. So this is really important work. This is a major qurba, something that draws us near to God. And we ask you to be as generous as you can possibly be with that. And we will try to be as effective and as efficient as we can possibly be. The ummah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not just you and me. That's a false understanding, or a limited understanding. The ummah of Muhammad is all of creation. And the ummah of Muhammad includes people like you and me, of course. We're the first ones that come to mind, and we're the ones who bear the responsibilities. And we are called ummatul ijaba. We are the ummah of acceptance, because the call of Islam came to us or to our forefathers and mothers one way or another, and they or we accepted it. So that makes us part of the ummatul ijaba, the ummah of acceptance. And then you have ummatul da'wah. You have the ummah of the call. And that would be the Balanta who haven't converted, and the Papel, and the Manjacos, and others, and everyone in the world who doesn't belong to Ummat al-Ijaba. So, and this is a major obligation of our time. And one of the signs of the end of time is that people who were our enemies, sometimes our bitterest enemies, and the Balanta were like that, they now become our friends, and they begin to convert. And there are a lot of cases like that in the world today. The Mongols of Mongolia are one. They were adamantly opposed to Islam, and they were completely intolerant of Islam. And now you have a significant number of them who have embraced the Dawa. So this is very important. And this is something that we need to take interest in, and we need to pay attention to. And in that, it's not just money to pay for teachers and to pay for very humble and very basic facilities, but it's also that we need to learn how to do this. We have got to learn how to do da'wah effectively, intelligently, thoroughly. And we've got to learn also how to organize them then as Muslim communities. Without, for example, in the case of the Balanta, destroying their tribal network or harming it or causing division among them. And so far, Islam has spread very peacefully among the Balanta. And we've had cases, for example, of an old woman who told her people, this is a good religion for you, but she says, for me, I'm still going to eat my pigs. I'm still going to stay with what I have and eat pigs. And then not long after that, she said, actually, I'm going to join you and give that up. So it's been spreading among the tribes, and we've tried to be really sensitive to them in this and really careful without dividing the tribes. And then how do you make them a Muslim community after that? And the Balanta live very much off of basic agriculture, which they do very well, and also the raising of livestock, cattle and sheep and goats. And so maybe also at some point we could also bring in permaculture, for example. We could expand things. They have a problem also of saline water because Balanta has a lot of inlets and a lot of bays and a lot of islands, and the ocean is really there. The Gambia has a similar situation, but the Gambia has in the middle of it the Gambia River, which is a huge freshwater river. So Gambian water, well water, doesn't tend to be saline, but in the land of the Balantas, the rainwater is the best water, and when you dig a well, it may be very salty. So you have to look for the good wells. So we also need to work on the wells. We need to dig wells. We need to find the good places to do that, and we need to help them with their agriculture as well. So there are many things to do, and for us, the da'wah is not just to give shahada and to walk away, but it is to give shahada and to stay, and that means to have teachers stay there who we strive to find among the very best, who will do that work sincerely. So this is something excellent for you to do in Ramadan and after Ramadan. This is a fundamental obligation of Islam. Every messenger and prophet is sent to give da'wah. And you, as a follower of those messengers and prophets, have also the obligation, if you can't do the da'wah, to support it. Of course, to do it, you really have to be properly trained. You have to have the right kind of education. You want to make sure that what you're teaching is correct and not false. And you want to also make sure that the approach you take is suitable for the people. The way that we would do da'wah, for example, among African Americans or Latinos or European Americans or immigrants, wherever they come from, is not the same for any of those groups. It would differ for every one of those groups. And it would differ in all cases very much from the Balanta. So we have to learn how to tailor make the da'wah in every case. And you can be sure, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, as the years go by, that we will be called to do these kind of operations all over the world. And even in our own countries, in the United States, in Canada, in Mexico, and elsewhere, in Great Britain. And in all those cases, as with the Balanta, to also establish viable communities that can take care of themselves, that can take care of the converts, that can look after their needs, that can develop them, educate them about Islam, give them the ability to find good work and income if they didn't have that already. So this is very, very important. The ummah, as you know, is ummatul ijaba, and it is ummatul da'wah. All of that is the ummah of your Prophet ﷺ, and you have to respect them as members of the ummah. And with regard to those people who are ummatul da'wah, the ummah of the call, even if they don't accept the call, it doesn't mean that then you turn your back on them or you scowl and you begin to speak ill of them. No, because it means that the message didn't reach them yet. And maybe the message will never reach those particular people, but what about their children? What about their children's children? What about their relatives? What about others? So always treat the ummah of da'wah with great respect. And the Muslim never looks down on anybody. And the Muslim never regards himself or herself to be better than anyone, because even though we may be in a good condition, but for the grace of God go I. That what did I do? What did you do to deserve to be part of Ummatul Ijaba, the Ummah of acceptance? The Ummah is even broader than that. The Ummah includes also Ummatul Tashrif, which means the Ummah of ennobilization and of great honor. And this ummah includes the rocks and the pebbles and the diamonds and the rubies and the jewels and steel and iron and all minerals, even salt. It includes even water, all atoms, all molecules, all compounds. And it includes also all the plants and all the animals. And it includes also the plants and those microorganisms like the COVID virus, which are not really plants or animals. Sometimes they're closer to one group than they are to another. Okay, but even these microscopic things, and we might not even be able to say they live in the same way, certainly, that a plant or animal lives, but they are also part of the ummah of tashrif. And you have ummatul bishara wal intidar, and this is the ummah that received the prophetic news that the Prophet Muhammad would come وسلم, at the end of time and be the greatest of them all. And that's from every messenger and prophet from the days of Adam until Jesus Christ, peace be upon him. And so they belong to his ummah as people of Bishara. And they looked forward to his coming, and they wished that they could see him or be with him. And you have also Ummatul Fatra, and this is the ummah of the gap. And these are those human beings who never were exposed to the message. And you find them in the islands, some of the islands of the South Pacific, and you might find them in some of the mountains of the world, or some of the remote villages of Africa or Asia, or even the United States. And they may be people also that heard about Islam, and they heard about someone called Muhammad, but what they heard was so distorted and so false, it didn't count as God's mercy to them, because what they were told Islam was, such as today when people think Islam is the same thing as terrorism, well, that's a good excuse for them. And it's a huge burden upon us because we have to show that's not true. So may you open up your hearts in this month to the entire ummah, which is all of creation from beginning to end. And may you give great attention now to Ummat Dawa. And may you try to spread the message there. Help us to do that and help us to establish a community that will be the very best and will be a model community for West Africa. God bless you and protect you and give you good. Waffaqakumullah. Wassalamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Ramadan Mubarak to all of you. We've now begun the fast by the grace of God, and may God give you strength and success and acceptance in this wonderful month. We are not able to do the things that we're used to doing in the month of Ramadan, but we can do those as much as possible at home. We can do substitutes for them. You can pray Taraweeh on your own and with your family, and you don't have to be a hafiz. You can just work on the verses and surahs that you have recited, that you have memorized, and recite them.
Repeat. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Omar, for that recording. Those are beautiful words, and this is the part where if we were in a mosque, we would close all the doors, and everyone wouldn't be able to get out until we got more money. So that's what I'm going to try to do on the webinar. I want to ask you guys for your funds, and I want to ask you with sincerity that we will do our best to put this in the right place. We will do our best to support these people. And inshallah, if you can go to launchgood.com/Bissau project, this is your chance to give to something that's meaningful. This is a Ramadan campaign. So if you can give during this month, it is ideal for us. The page is up for 30 days, but really we want to try and match a generous donor's $10,000 today. If we can raise $10,000 more, it would really go a long way to hitting all of our goals. As I said to you all, we currently support 4 villages, but there are 6 more villages that really need our help and want to embrace Islam and need our support. If you can go ahead and really go to today to launchgood.com, it'll be the first campaign you see. It's called the Bissau Project. Please donate, and we really would appreciate it. And we want to thank you for being on the webinar with us. We want to thank you for joining us today. I thought the discussions were great. If you want to follow the media and some of the cool videos we showed, that'll be on the Oasis Initiative on YouTube, and also I will post it on Facebook. We also have an Instagram account called the Bissau Project. So thank you again to everybody. Again, please donate if you can in the next few hours. We'd really appreciate it. I'll just close with a short dua. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. Thank you so much again. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.